So, according to advanced research studies out of California, the findings are 100% unanimous that the UFO alien abduction experiences are out of body experiences. Welcome to Clarity Now. They are a type of lucid dream, but that doesn't mean they're not real. On this channel, we discuss strategies, advanced strategies for many different situations. I'm Kristen. Now, I don't know about you, but I detest cramped spaces. So my spirit is always ready, just chomping at the bit for an opportunity to exit the meat suit, since I can't be tied down to anything in this world. However, keep in mind, there's a huge difference between flying in your dreams and the exteriorization of your etheric body in the out-of-body experience. And you'll know the difference when it happens to you. Trust and believe. Hey, I'm not talking about having a dream where you're flying that you remember but a glimpse of, okay? I'm talking about having your full state of conscious awareness with you when your etheric double breaks free. It looks like you at about age 30, unless you're a kid and then it looks like a kid. You'll usually be wearing whatever you wore to bed, but not always. It depends on how conscious you are regarding the nature of the projection. And then you can go and consciously explore other realms of consciousness and do whatever you want and remember it all, albeit with wonder and amazement. You see, what happened is, in the alien abduction experience, you got stuck in an in-between phase of manifesting and externalizing your etheric body. And when you perceived the anomalous display of lights and the loud mechanical unearthly sounds, vibrations, shaking and roaring as an alien spacecraft, since you have no other reference nor any idea what else it could possibly be, and you interpret this confusion about what's going on as something to be fearful and apprehensive about, then your belief in the grays that everyone else sees, along with your dread and apprehension, they both serve to increase the frightening aspects of the experience that you're having, which actually serves to shape and dictate the imagery that you will see and experience. Your etheric body leaves the physical body every single night, because guess what? Guess where it has to go to recharge itself? Yes, to the ether. Yes, your etheric body has to charge itself up in the ether. That's what's powering your physical body during the day, every day. But once you break free from the body, if you look down at yourself sleeping on the bed, and if you allow yourself to become highly confused and disturbed by it, you basically will shock yourself, snap right back into your body in a split second. So uncontrolled emotional responses will halt the exteriorization of your etheric body, which could happen quickly or take several minutes, up to 2 hours. But since you stopped yourself from completing the exteriorization in between phases of development, then you got yourself stuck between where you're at with the fear and dread of what will happen next and the higher, more pleasant realms that are there for you to explore in an out-of-body experience. And since sleep paralysis is a necessary step in the process, and since you view it fearfully instead of as an opportunity, it too compounds the nature of the fearful dilemma that you find yourself experiencing. And now you just have to wait out the sleep paralysis, since you stopped yourself mid-phase, until your etheric body is interiorized again and you can regain movement of your limbs and speech again. So the etheric body travels to the astral plane, which is the spirit world, existing simultaneously with the physical realm. The term heterotopia is a concept where both worlds accumulate and interact with each other beyond our normal waking perception. It's an infinite realm without space and time as we know it, that holds all our potential dreams and all our potential nightmares. There's the seen and the unseen worlds of the living and the dead. In the out-of-body experience, you leave your body the same way that you will leave it at the time of death. The only difference is it will be without the silver cord, which attaches you through your pineal gland, keeping you tethered to the body while you are still alive, but which allows you to explore while the body sleeps every night, to the same place where you will be going when you cross over to the other side of the veil. So many people are interested in having these experiences for the inner wisdom that can be gained while you are still alive about where you will be going after you die. Okay, so it's super important that you need to let your first conscious thought, when you become aware that you're having some type of experience, let your first conscious thought create a positive experience for you. Since the heavens or the astral realms are thought responsive. Learn how to, instead of being a victim to your own uncontrolled emotional responses, begin giving yourself commands like clarity now, or tell yourself to rise up, up, up from off the table. You may as well learn how to follow through and turn the UFO alien abduction experience into an out-of-body experience, since apparently you've got the skills, or you wouldn't be going through this shit in the first place. Now, when you look at the near-death experiences people have in the context of meeting up with non-human entities, just to say that it is an indisputable fact that yes, people do encounter other beings when they explore these alternate realities. Yes, people do wake up to see 1 to 3 beings by their bed. It's a thing. Chris Troy from Michigan had an out-of-body experience. He said, quote, "I awakened to the shock of a strange being touching me. I was so scared and paralyzed and tried to scream, and then the thing disappeared," end quote. A dream is a hazy, misty, confused, and poor recollection of a highly sketchy and unlikely scenario, whereas the near-death experience, the out-of-body experience, and the UFO alien abduction experience are always perceived as a very vivid, unforgettable experience that was more real than real. So all 3 events, the NDE, the OBE, and the UFE, are technically a type of lucid dream. Now hold on, there's a huge difference between dreaming and a lucid dream. Because when you have a lucid dream, then now you just broke through the walls that usually enclose and hide the dream world from your memory. And so from you knowing about it, with your awareness, which is all powerful. Or you could say you slipped through to the etheric realms, to an alternate state of reality, and a more vivid experience. Since our normal waking state on the material plane of existence is the lowest level of consciousness because of the density of the human body, which literally keeps you down. So what's it all about? The UFO alien abduction experience. Well, the UFOs change shape all the time in front of people's eyes. So what does that tell you? It tells you that this realm has a holographic or simulated nature. It shows you that the UFOs are a product of the morphogenetic fields which surround us in this environment we find ourselves in. The morphic fields interact with our own personal consciousness, beliefs, desires, intentions, thoughts, and memories, all of which are stored in the cloud, in the ether, not in the human brain. Now, the UFOs also are known to vanish into thin air, poof, or fly into a tree like the elves, the Huldafolk, the hidden people who come out of the rocks. Does that mean they are just a figment of your imagination? Here's what Whitley Strieber said about it. Now, he is the most well-known UFO abductee. In this quote, he explains what he feels is the potential significance of these types of experiences. He says that he is a thinking person who by no means buys the extraterrestrial explanation. However, he says, I don't feel that a simple psychological explanation is in order either. Something else is going on. Something akin to the transcendental visionary experience that has always been with humanity. He says, I myself try to make use of this experience in the same way that a shaman on the steppes of Central Asia 2,000 years ago made use of his startling vision of the world of the dead by telling my story and bringing my dreams back to society. Perhaps, he says, we had better try to stop laughing at this state and start trying to describe it, because an awful lot of people believe they are experiencing contact with higher beings and another world. If we don't stop imposing interpretations and narratives on the experience, we may find ourselves in the grip of the most powerful religion the world has ever known. Schreiber, 1998, among others, holds the opinion that the UFE should be associated in the context of an OBE. Quote, at the phenomenological level, they are of course quite dissimilar, but it is in their deep structure, as it were, rather than in their surface contextual manifestations that some important commonalities can be discerned. Rechtschaffen also, in 1978, spoke about these three experiences, the OBE, the NDE, and the UFE. He said they were all lucid dreams. Worsley, in 1988, was the first lucid dreamer to write about his techniques and experiences, saying that he could enter straight into the lucid dreaming state right from the waking state by lying awake in bed for up to 2 hours on his back and not moving. Worsley comments, quote, I am not given to superstition or believing in unnecessary entities, but perhaps the term dream is a little too bland to do justice to the ultra-realism of these experiences. For instance, he says, if one dreams as I have, in rich tactile and auditory imagery of being examined in the dark by robots, or operated upon by small beings whose goodwill and competence may be in doubt, or abused in various ways by life forms not known by terrestrial biology, it can be very difficult to keep still. I have found that if I do not keep still, this particular state of consciousness usually evaporates in a moment. This can be very useful as an escape route, but it can be annoying to lose it when the success rate is not high and each attempt takes 2 hours or more. He says, I like to regard myself as at least a moderately intrepid investigator, but I have to admit that in spite of being intellectually of the opinion that what was happening was only internally generated imagery, I have flinched during the episodes on more than one occasion. Quote, assuming these reports come from fantasy-prone personalities and sleep-related hallucinations, no doubt can explain some of what occurs in these experiences, but the commonplace reactions of condescending attitudes in viewing these stories or dismissing them with amusement is a hindrance to trying to understand them. Let's keep it in the forefront of our minds that the current modern-day model of physical reality from quantum physicists say that consciousness and not matter is the stuff of the universe, saying that consciousness is the primary reality from which matter and life emerge. Pure consciousness is the source of all being, of all experiences, ordinary and extraordinary, end quote. So the million-dollar question as to are these real happenings or did someone just imagine them? We already told you that yes, these events are perceived as realer than real. So yes, these experiences are real, just not in the sense of waking reality. Just remember, when you're dreaming, you don't know you're dreaming. What happened is, when you are pre-sleep or post-sleep, or if you slip into a trance-like state, or if you happen to become awake while you're dreaming, these are the best times. Not the only times, but certainly the easiest times for you to slip through the layers of consciousness with your awareness intact into your etheric body to have an out-of-body experience. Are out-of-body experiences real? Well, yes, they are. And the exact same signs and indicators that you are about to have an out-of-body experience are occurring right before the alien abduction experience. So I call it an OBE with archonic presence. Who are the Archons? The Greys, or any other alien creature you may see, including the insect heads, are the Archons, and they can shapeshift. So what does that tell you? Well, since they can shapeshift, then they are a part of the matrix, or a part of the holographic nature of our environment. Like I mentioned, the morphogenetic fields that surround us are able to interact with our consciousness, and they are able to respond to us with imagery based on our common shared group beliefs, thoughts, and ideas, which are all in the cloud, in the ether. They're not on Google's hard drive. The Archons are the aliens who are programmed, sexless worker bots who were created to serve the Matrix, not mankind. They aren't eternal, but they don't die either, unless the Matrix shuts down. They are the Watchers, and we have never, ever, ever been alone. Everyone who has had an out-of-body experience said they felt the presence and sometimes the touch of a non-human presence. I really think that the Archons are the ones who sit on people's chests at night, just so their etheric body can't break free from the physical body, just to prevent you from having an out-of-body experience and discovering the true nature of the afterlife. Now, why? Why is this happening to people? What possible nefarious purpose could there be to these experiences, since they are obviously significant, since they're so vivid and real to the people who experience them? Well, here comes an unpleasant truth, but really, try not to let it frighten you, since it is what it is. And since these entities' goal seems very obviously to frighten people, since they come at night and their visitations are unwanted, and since their activities involve doing things to us against our will, to terrorize people. Now, the aliens who run around 3 deep obviously do have some kind of agenda behind their activities, so what do they want? The situation we find ourselves in is that Earth is not a school. It is a loosh farm. We already know that the universe and our bodies are electrical in nature. That's because this reality is a type of computer program. And yes, the ancient people who lived in the most remote, farthest past, for example on Atlantis, did have better technology than we do today, which is a fact that many people recognize based on a preponderance of the evidence. And guess what? Yes, it takes a lot of power to run the programs that make up our reality. And where does all that power come from? To keep it going and running smoothly? From the sun? Nope. It comes from the biggest resource we know of. Yes, humans. Loosh is a form of energetic substance composed of the highly charged and powerful emotional energies of mankind. There is a reason we have such strong emotions and emotional responses to things in our environment. Emotion is power. Now, many people have noticed that the aliens are soulless. They got that right. They're not handicapped by emotions like love or compassion like we are. There are things that we are not willing to do because of love and compassion. They don't have that problem. That's why their eyes are black. We, the so-called human beings who inhabit this realm, are divine sparks of eternal, pure consciousness. That's why our eyes radiate out light and magnetic energy. You can hypnotize people with the energy that comes out of your eyes. You can even hypnotize yourself in the mirror. But their eyes are black because they want to suck in this type of powerful energy, like a black hole, where no light or love is going to come out from there. Yes, we are eternal. We can never die. We just get sucked in by the light at the end of the tunnel after death, keeping us stuck in a reincarnation loop. So we get recycled back into the matrix. Now, if you disagree with me about reincarnation, I would ask you, how would you know? Guess what? We all get our memory wiped when we come here, okay? Do you get that? Because when you're born, you don't know who you are, where you came from before, or why you are here. Now that's an indisputable fact right there that you can't get around. Okay, so we know nothing about our existence before we got here, or where we're going to go when we die. No one does, right? Right. That's right. That's because when you die, you're coming right back here in a reincarnation loop where you won't be allowed to remember any of your past lives or the time in between incarnations unless you know how to do something else to break the wheel of samsara, never-ending reincarnations. And that's just the way it is, which is well known by all the ancient spiritual teachings and the most ancient religions of this world. I didn't make this up. It is known by many millions all over the world. Now, why? Why? Because they're harvesting your loosh, which is the product of all your human experiences, especially all the suffering and intense emotional energy like hate, conflict, love, jealousy, but mostly the fear and suffering that we go through here. Now, when the Bible said, no one is without sin, no one, what they really meant to say is that no one gets by here without suffering. No one. And this is the fall of man, when we fell from our divine inhabitation as eternal sparks of divine consciousness, without form, down to earth. Whether by choice or otherwise, it was a fall. And you better believe it was unpleasant to try and fit the huge expanse of our consciousness into these little bodies. Which does not mean we are insignificant. We are not just a flea on a flea on a flea, okay? Fleas are parasites. We are not a parasite. This whole place revolves around us for our power. And we are the ones who keep it going with the loosh that must be harvested, which is a highly valuable product and a type of spiritual currency. So the Archons, who can shapeshift, this is their job, to harvest the loosh. That's what they were created for. They are like our handlers. Now, what is their job? What is their purpose? It's simple. 1, get you in a body. 2, keep you in a body. And 3, collect the loosh. That's it. That's what they do. That's all they do. Those 3 simple things plus all the shenanigans that go along with it. Because in reality, we are way more powerful than them. We are creators. We are a spirit in a body. This body is just a vehicle. When you pass over, you won't even lose consciousness for a second. You just boop, step right out of your body like walking through a door. It doesn't hurt at all. In fact, it feels fantastic. When you pass, you never felt better. Now, maybe you would be happy to come back and get another body, another chance to experience the material world with all of its attraction and emotional content. Maybe you want to come back and fly a glider or fall in love again, and that's great. More power to you. But some of us shudder at the thought of suffering through possibly thousands of incarnations, maybe more. And yes, there are many people who never want to have to come back here again. Of course, that's where the shenanigans will start up. This life was just a dress rehearsal for the real game, which will be played at the time of your death. But this video is not about those particular shenanigans. We're concerned right now in explaining the shenanigans that go on right here on Earth. The trickery in the afterlife has to do with getting you in a body and keeping you in a body. The trickery that goes on down on Earth has to do with collecting your loosh. Now, I've spent over 10,000 hours in research regarding advanced strategies for legal situations, so I understand some things about the Admiralty jurisdiction. And one of the rules for the controllers of that jurisdiction is that they're not supposed to let you know that it's an Admiralty jurisdiction. They're not allowed to upset the people. Well, guess what? Admiralty is universal because the Archons are utilizing contracts in the afterlife. And just like in Admiralty, as far as it goes with collecting the loosh, they're not supposed to let you know that they're collecting the loosh from you. Or you might not let them keep doing it. So, their job on Earth is one thing, to collect the loosh. That's what all their activities are centered on. And they don't sleep, so it's mostly at night when you're dreaming. And you don't remember jack trip about what went on. But they aren't allowed to let you know that's what they were doing. So, commence with the nonsense. They're harvesting your DNA or genetic materials, etc. Wake up, guys. It is impossible for two completely different species to mate in a test tube or any other way and reproduce. Okay, it is impossible. Believe me, many have tried throughout time and no one has succeeded. If something was born from this mixture, it wouldn't live very long and it would never, ever be able to reproduce anything. This is an indisputable fact. So get the idea of human hybrids completely out of your mind. Please, it is foolishness. You've been tricked. They are able to implant thoughts, memories, and images into your mind to make you think those are your own observations. Okay? Showing you hybrid babies and making you think they took your unborn children or whatever other nonsense. They're just harvesting your loosh, but you're not supposed to know that's what they're doing. And this is why all the fear-mongering goes on with chasing the spaceship down in your car, or the UFO is chasing you when you're trying to drive away. All this right before contact is to terrorize you to increase the loosh production right before they harvest it. That's why, after they get the loosh, boom, you're back in your bed. They're done. They've done their job. They've gotten what they wanted and needed from you. So now they will leave you alone. Not killing the cow, just getting the milk. Now, back to the research that proves to you that the UFE is an OBE. There are very real and unmistakable indicators that occur right before you are about to have an OBE, and those who study it look for those indicators and use those opportunities to try and roll out of their body to go and explore in their etheric bodies. So, your etheric body leaves your physical body. It looks like you, but kind of shiny and see-through. These are the ghostly apparitions people see, walking through walls and floating slowly out the window. Now, those in the know, as is well documented in thousands of books and teachings regarding the subject of the OBE, there are very pronounced auditory phenomenon, like buzzing, knocking, rumbling, thumping, roaring, mechanical sounds, high-pitched whining, unearthly noises that people don't normally hear. And for most people, it is something that terrorizes them, since they have no idea where the sound is coming from. And it does sound like a spaceship landing. It's super loud and scary. And sometimes the noises will get louder and then softer, and then louder again. Probably as you move into and out of different phases of consciousness. And then they also experience crazy vibrations. The whole bed and house will vibrate and sometimes spin, or at least it feels like it's spinning. Later, some people have realized that it wasn't the bed that was spinning, it was them. Their etheric body was up on the ceiling, spinning, looking down at the bed, thinking it was spinning. Now, another similarity is seeing lights. And I have personally seen the lights while in a trance-like state at preschool at nap time when I wasn't really tired, but was forced to at least lay down and close my eyes for a period of time. And it was fantastic. I will never, ever forget the feeling of awe and wonder at the spectacular display of colors and lights. It was like fireworks, only more creative, and I was stunned. It happened more than once, and I had to ask the lady in charge because I wanted to know, what was that I was seeing and experiencing? It was amazing and unexplainable to see lights when your eyes are closed. This wasn't a dream. I was not asleep. I was supposed to be asleep, but I was awake. Anyway, so seeing phenomenal lights in the sky or through closed eyelids or wherever else is a well-known indicator that you're about to have an out-of-body experience. So in the near-death experience, you float and get sucked into a tunnel of light. In the UFO alien abduction experience, you float and get sucked into a beam of light. And in the out-of-body experience, you see crazy anomalous lights right before you float up and out of your body. Now we come to the biggie, paralysis. Yes, sleep paralysis, it's called. And you can't get around this one. It's a very striking link between the UFE and the OBE. After an OBE, you will experience paralysis of the body. You can't move or talk for several minutes or more sometimes. You just have to wait it out until you can regain your ability to first maybe move a finger or a toe, and then usually the whole body will be freed from this very frightening state of paralysis. I don't have to explain why it's so scary when it happens, since obviously, if there was a nefarious presence or the thought that one might enter, well, you wouldn't be able to defend yourself or flee from an ensuing attack. And even just poking and prodding would be unwanted, since it would be against your will at that point. In general, it's a very unnatural, unwanted state and very unpleasant for people. And it's always accompanied by a terrible sense of fear and dread, except for those people who actually seek out these experiences, the bold, who learn to look forward to their occurrence for their opportunity to leave the body and go explore other dimensions, realms, or states of consciousness. Now, according to my research, the UFE matches up as a form of OBE, and I did not pick and choose which alien abduction scenarios to read about. I just sort of looked at them all. Here are the evidences and proofs. The house shaking. The kid is paralyzed by fear. He can't scream, can't move. Sleep paralysis. First the lights, then the being at his bed. Classic OBE. Multiple abductions. That's because you dream a lot, giving you many opportunities for an out-of-body experience that you're not taking advantage of. The beings are first hopping, and then floating, and then walking right in. This is the holographic nature of reality. Shape-shifting. His or her family was left behind, kept in a trance-like state. Witnesses to a UFE often see the sleeping person float up out of the bed, still curled up in a fetal position, and slowly float down the stairs and out the window. Now, this is a classic OBE, guys. Countless OBEs have reported doing this. They float through the walls too, since it is their etheric body that leaves the physical body behind. So the floating person may or may not know that they're dreaming. People have been seen to float straight out through the ceiling. Yes, you're in your etheric body. The famous Linda Moulton Howe wrote a book about the UFO alien abduction experiences, and she called it Glimpses of Other Realities. Bam! You see? Mike Martin, who is a famous OBE influencer, speaks about glimpses as well in describing his OBE techniques. Why are you always in bed when you get abducted? Because you were sleeping. It's a lucid dream. They wake up to blinding lights and strange sounds, indicators of an OBE. He would be going to sleep when he became aware that something was happening. He has tiny blips, glimpses, of clear ET interaction going on, and he has no clue what it's about. That's right. You're not supposed to understand what they're doing. Clearly, they are doing something. As with an out-of-body experience, the UFEs occur during or near sleep. Again, we're talking about pre-sleep and post-sleep, hypnagogic, hypnopompic states of consciousness. Many people who have had a UFE claim it was all a dream. Spaceships, by the way, are a way to visualize flying, like in an out-of-body experience, like flying carpets. Now, this touches my heart. Many people suffer from having feelings of longing or of missing someone. They find themselves at the window looking for the UFOs, looking for the E.T.s, and or feeling like they're missing something or something and they don't know what it is. Well, it is a common experience because the feeling of being on the etheric plane in the spirit world, which is very real, that is where you will be going after you die. It's the same exact place where you would go during an out-of-body experience. Okay? And the feeling of being there is so much more real and more vivid. And it's, at least for the OBE people, it's highly pleasant and intense. And you can unknowingly, or rather subconsciously, miss that, even if you don't actually remember the experience with your conscious mind. Seeing a glowing white light and feeling magnetically drawn or pulled into it is common for all three experiences, the NDE, the OBE, and the UFE. The spaceship will shine down a tunnel of light, just like the NDE, and you will get sucked up into it. The UFE happens on the night shift and or in remote locations like farms after milking 70 cows. Places and times that are boring, where it could be easy to fall asleep or fall into a trance-like state. Or it happens when you're driving in your car, since driving is something you do in a trance-like state. And people often fall asleep in the car. They put the baby in the car seat to get them to fall asleep. This guy said he lost control of his body but did not lose consciousness. Bam! That's what people were looking for in the out-of-body experience. Again, I want to remind you that keep in mind, for the most part, yes, the aliens do want to terrorize you and scare you down. And they know how to scare the bejesus out of people. The police have seen UFOs nodding to them, tilting themselves and nodding to acknowledge that they knew that the police were seeing them. Yes, they want to be seen. They are the original and constant fear-mongers of mankind. That's why sometimes there's hundreds or thousands of eyewitnesses. They want to traumatize the masses. Wake up, they're not harvesting your DNA or genetics. How do I know? Well, first of all, the so-called crystallography images used to establish the theory of DNA are childlike pencil drawings at best. You go look at the images yourself, and then come and talk to me about DNA being something real, okay? So they're not harvesting your DNA. They're harvesting loosh, but they must hide that fact from you with what they will allow you to see by means of the thoughts and ideas that they plant in your mind to make you think they're doing something else. Yes, they insert something and extract something. It's called loosh. Now let's go back to the evidences and proofs. Since there might be some of you who are interested in hearing about hundreds of hours of research condensed into snippets. These UFO abductions, like I said, they do happen in the car a lot. And many people have said, I wonder if they are just feeding off of our fear. Bingo! The Archons are the spiritual vampires, succubus, and aliens people see and interact with. Even Barney and Betty Hill, when the UFO was chasing them. First in the car, and then when the car broke down, they're chasing them on foot. And Barney looked up right as the UFO went right past him, and he could see one of the occupants in the craft wave to him with a big smile and grin on his face as they went by. It's a terrifying image. It's fear-mongering at its finest. To increase the loosh production. They're going to get it anyway, so they might as well increase the production at the same time. It's just a matter of productivity and less work for them to do later. Sometimes they have sex with the aliens. Well, they were probably just extracting loosh, and they let you think they were having sex with you. Were you tired afterwards? Probably. So if it was all just a dream, Kristen, then why do so many people see similar entities? So yes, people see similar, if not the exact same entities. Usually, but it's closer actually to say interdimensional beings. Since yes, it is in between phases of reality outside your normal state of consciousness. They see the greys, the insect heads, praying mantis, reptilians, etc. Because, well, people used to see the succubus, the hag, angels, demons, witches, or vampires. Because of the collective unconscious, aka morphogenetic fields, aka Akashic records, or collective memories. Our memories are shared, like many of our experiences. Collective habits, ideas, things you heard about or saw on TV, in the movies, books, etc. So of course, yes, we will all have similar experiences because we all have the same dumb ideas in our heads. But let me be clear again about the alien entities who are the Archons. These entity beings are located within the matrix itself, in the morphic fields, made up of human beliefs, not from the future, not from outer space, not from Andromeda, not from the underground bases, which those bases do exist. Yes, we found them buried like that, left over from a previous, more advanced civilization, which they were probably destroyed in the flood or when the Archons pulled the switch on the reset button. They can never leave the matrix that they were created to serve. They are an integral part of it. Listen up. When we are out of the body, we don't see with our eyeballs. Think about it. We see with our mind. Our mind interprets the energy forms or consciousness we encounter determines the meaning of it, and also shapes and molds our perceived reality. So if you believe in gray aliens with big heads and large almond-shaped eyes, then that's what you see. You are predisposed to see certain images. Now we have to take responsibility for our thoughts and expectations, since we are co-creators of our perceptions and experiences in every dimension of the universe. Now, many experience teeth shattering or knocking on the wall behind your head while you are trying to fall asleep with the anomalous lights. Out-of-body experience. There appear to be many military connections with the so-called E.T.s. And yes, I have no doubt that the military does work with the Archons on some level, be it knowingly or otherwise, to maintain power and control over the masses. They have identical agendas. The Archons probably use the military like tools in their many machinations. Okay, people hear claps of thunder, electrical buzzing, low tones, rumbling, ice cracking, the earth shaking, the bed vibrating off the ground, whooshing sounds. And the UFOs will swoop down and pretend they play cat and mouse with you. After having been paralyzed by a combination of the mysterious lights and buzzing sounds, classic OBE indicator, then he woke up in a seat that seemed to hold him in place. Another daydream or glimpse. By some sort of suction, sucking up the loosh, restraining all his movements, sleep paralysis. He remembers later, after he comes back to his normal waking state, describes them holding a helmet and then putting the helmet on his head. It had 1,000 little needles in it to stab him all over his head. Torture treatment for the loosh production. Instead of just killing him, they want him to be fearful. He sees a being wearing a cape. The Archons wear robes and capes. They enter the mountain, like the Hulda folk, probably also Archons. Heard a paralyzing thumping sound, and the area lit up. Then he heard a heavy breathing sound, and the bridge began to sway. OBE. Then he saw a 7 to 8 foot tall being looking right at him, terrorizing him for the loosh production. Aliens often talk in robot voices, Matrix, saying, "You are one with me." In other words, saying, "The Matrix has you." After the car dies, electrical phenomenon. Hears a buzzing sound like a swarm of bees, OBE. Then the car starts shaking violently, classic indicator of an OBE. Hears an earthquake and people screaming. Tries to go help them, but he can't move, sleep paralysis. Something was impeding him. Something was restraining him, bound himself immobile, and was unable to move. Then an unseen force began to elevate and lift him up in the air, levitating. And then all the noise and lights stopped, and everything returned to normal. Bam! You had an OBE, and then you woke up. Now the car is fine, and he can drive away. Loosh collected. You are dismissed. Allowed to leave. And all the missing time? An OBE explains it. Since time doesn't exist in the astral realm, they remember the experience vividly up to a certain point, and then boom, your memory cuts off right there. You don't remember what happened next or how you got home after a car chase or whatever. That's because they harvested your loosh and they can't let you know about it, so you don't get to remember. That's all. All these marks left on the skin are from their loosh collecting devices. Again, you're not supposed to know. That's what they're doing to you. UFO lights in the sky are always rocking, spinning, shaking, vibrating back and forth. It's all classic indicators of an oncoming OBE. There are cases with multiple abductees, i.e. shared experiences. There are people who dream the same dream too, all the time. So that doesn't rule out the lucid dream theory. The beings muttered something to him he couldn't understand, and he became paralyzed. Well, that is a way to hypnotize people, by speaking gobbledygook to them. And when they try to figure out what you just said, bam, their conscious mind checks out to lunch, and they're in a trance state, which is the best time to have an OBE. I gathered my research from many sources, but I especially want to give a shout out to the Street of Silence channel on YouTube for his video, 14 Terrifying Alien Abductions. He just did an amazing job on that video, in that the case studies he discussed were all really well documented, highly credible reports. Nothing extra, he just gave the facts as they had been reported. And there's a fascinating case study at around the 1 hour, 50-minute mark, and I will give you the quickie overview. Okay, so this was in Brazil. First, he heard a loud sound that frightened him. Second, suddenly he looked up and saw lights above the palm trees, so bright it blinded his eyes. Third, guess what comes next? You got it. Suddenly he's paralyzed, he can't move. And then, about a minute later, he slowly began to rise in the air in a horizontal position. Bam! This is an OBE all day long. He recounted all the classic indicators of an approaching out-of-body experience in textbook order. That's a wrap. Let there be no doubt in your mind. Okay? There were 3 beings with visors. They talk to each other and they ignore him completely. Typical rude behavior from the soulless Archon worker bots. Then one of the aliens mutters something incomprehensible to him. They speak jibber-jabber to him to put him in a hypnotic trance-like state. He felt like they were running tests on him. Yes, they were running tests on him to see if the louche was ready to be harvested. And then he passed out, lost consciousness. You are sleeping. It is a lucid dream. But that doesn't mean it wasn't real. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. He was levitated out of the UFO. He's flying. It's an OBE. He came to rest on a nearby flat rock. He was taking a nap. He realized he was still paralyzed. Sleep paralysis. Classic OBE. Later, he remembered the little man, 1 meter tall, put some kind of liquid in his mouth. After that, he remembers nothing for 10 days. I guess they either drugged him or sucked him dry. A fisherman found him lying naked on the ground in the jungle. He couldn't move. He was rigid and catatonic. Now, this is a classic side effect of a deep hypnotic state, which is the best time to have an OBE. They took him to a small hospital. The doctors tried to move his arms and legs, but they simply could not. She pricked him all over his body with a sharp pin, but he showed no reaction at all. And this is well-known evidence of a deep hypnotic trance state. His head appeared to have the hair shaved off, but upon closer inspection, the doctor said it looked like his hair had been burned off. The tops of his ears were red, just to terrorize him to get the louche. 4 molars were broken off, still bleeding. Teeth were severely chattering, classic OBE. 3 days later, the guy was wide awake, and when they flew him to a bigger hospital, he was unable to speak. He was just staring straight ahead. He didn't respond to anything anyone said or did. Post-traumatic stress syndrome, poor guy. He was wide awake but couldn't respond to anyone for a week. They had to feed him intravenously and catheterize him to keep him alive. Bob Pratt, a renowned UFO researcher in Brazil, investigated it. He talked to 4 doctors, 2 psychiatrists, and a neurologist who had examined the guy. None of them could come up with any explanation for what had happened to him, and none of them could even understand nor explain what kind of condition he was in or why. Well, mystery solved. Thank me, I'm welcome. He was in a deep hypnotic trance state. When the guy finally came to, he started telling people his story over and over and over with no variation whatsoever. He was clearly distraught, and his condition was indicative of someone who had been through shocking events with severe physical abuse. Should I continue? I could go on with examples that fit the mold of my theory about the UFE being an OBE, because every single case study I looked into fit the bill. I'll just summarize one last case study from Street of Silence channel on YouTube. Go check out his content. He does a really thorough job with his research. This is called the Brooklyn Bridge Incident. It took place in 1989. Now, it should be noted right up front that the woman in this case was obsessed with UFOs, and she was reading a new book by Bud Hopkins called Intruders at the time, which is about alien abduction experiences. She detected a bump on her nose. She went to the doctor. They said she must have had nasal surgery, but she said she never had nasal surgery. Her mom said no, she never had surgery. Hypnosis ensued. Boom, at 3:15 a.m., she wakes up paralyzed. Classic OBE. She sees 3 gray beings floating in her bedroom. She tries to reach out and call for her husband, no doubt. But the beings tell her to be quiet. Sounds like sleep paralysis. They began pulling her through the bedroom window. Classic OBE. She floated out through the window of a 12-story building and into the UFO. Inside the UFO, she saw a table, and she hoped that she wasn't going to be put on the table. Unfortunately, she was then placed on the table. She started screaming. This is deeply disturbing. It is terrorizing her for the Lush production. The Archon puts his hand over her mouth to keep her quiet. It sounds like sleep paralysis. The Archon speaks gibberish to her, put her in a hypnotic trance state. Medical procedures ensue, obviously under sleep paralysis, which she said were so painful she passed out, i.e. lost consciousness. Went back to sleep. She was dreaming. She recalls they put something in her nasal cavity. So anytime they touch you, it was probably Lush harvesting. She woke up 3 hours later. Bam, she was dreaming. But that doesn't mean it didn't really happen, okay? Okay, I hope that's clear. In 1991, 2 security guards later sent a letter to a UFO researcher saying they witnessed an oval-shaped craft with spinning green lights on the bottom, and that they also saw a woman float out of a 12-story window wearing a white nightgown in the horizontal position. Classic out-of-body experience phenomenon. And then she hovered in midair in a beam of light. That's also a near-death experience phenomenon, which is also a lucid dream. They said they saw 3 of the ugliest creatures they ever saw. Their heads were out of proportion and very large with no hair. Richard and Dan attempted to get out of the car. Men to the rescue! Yay! But they were unable to move. Sleep paralysis. It was the night shift. They slipped into a trance state and had a shared waking dream experience. Another woman popped up who said she was on the Brooklyn Bridge at the time. She said she saw lights. Her car stopped. She got out of her car and the bridge started swaying. Then suddenly it stopped and her car was fine. So the big takeaway for me here in this last case study is 2 things. First of all, we need to recognize that we are able to create our experiences and to influence what happens to us by what we put our time and attention into. Of course, all her thinking about, reading about, and probably talking about the UFO alien abduction scenarios was kind of like asking for one to happen. Oh, and the other thing that stands out is the part where people saw her floating out through the window in a horizontal position. This is a classic out-of-body experience type of phenomenon. Now, in conclusion, I want to say that to every person who has published their UFO alien abduction experience, that I have nothing but respect for you. Even though you didn't understand what happened to you, and you knew people would probably ridicule the information, you were very brave to speak up anyway. And yes, you actually really did a great service to mankind. Now, I never thought I would say that, but hearing about what you experienced needs to teach us a critical lesson, that there are alternate phases of consciousness. This waking state of reality is not the only real realm, and that there are mysteries still left to explore. But those mysteries are not going to be found or solved in outer space. The real mystery of this life is only to be found and solved by going within to gain self-knowledge, gnosis, because we are capable of amazing things, since apparently we can fly through windows and ceilings in our sleep. I hope that anyone who is interested will start looking into the OBE phenomenon and work on going into themselves, since they are a divine spirit, to explore their own consciousness, which is ever expanding and eternal. We are the dreamers, and we are the creators. This matrix reality is supported and powered by us. The Archons run around 3D because outside of their tricks and deceptions, they are weak. And they need all their trickery and they need the backup. But one thing they cannot do, hopefully, is to continue to trick you down once you become awake to their bullshit. Stay mentally strong. And remember, there are advanced strategies that can be applied in every area of your life. Intelligent people share knowledge and utilize strategic planning and proactive measures in order to avoid suffering. Smart people don't willingly choose to suffer in order to learn something, because there is nothing to be learned from suffering except for how to avoid it in the future. You can avoid suffering by using your imagination for creative problem solving. So stay strong mentally, and I will see you in the next video.